Welcome to the Tech and Productivity Update for Week 16. So Anthropic has released their new Claude Opus model, which is just a slight bump from 4.6 to 4.7. So it's not anything earth-shattering, anything crazy, just a bit of an improvement on some of the areas that they're trying to focus on. So for example, it outperforms Opus 4.6 in agentic coding, which seems to be one of the areas that they're most focused on with this release right now. So what they're saying is that it's better at longer running work and computer use overall. Also, they added a new extra high effort level, which is supposed to sit between high and max, and Claude Code now defaults to this for all their plans. So just make sure you're aware of that if you're using Claude Code. One of the improvements for Opus 4.7 is that it's supposed to be stricter in terms of following your instructions. So previously, one of the issues that I personally had with Opus 4.6 was while it was a bit more intelligent than 4.5, it was also more creative and it took a lot more liberties with the instructions. It would get the job done, but it would kind of do it in unconventional ways, or it might also add additional changes that I didn't ask for. And supposedly 4.7 is supposed to be a little bit better on that end. Also, they added a bit of a vision upgrade. So now it can support images up to 3.75 megapixels. So that just means it's a lot better at processing visual information, diagrams, schematics, any kind of information that has a lot of detail in a picture. Now Opus is going to be much better about capturing all those details and understanding the image a bit better. Pricing stays the same as Opus 4.6. This is currently available on the API, on Claude.ai, and through all their partners. So if we look at the actual release that they gave us, they talk a little bit about the metrics. They've got this really interesting chart here where they, of course, compare it to their previous model, some of the competitors. But of course, they've got this legendary Mythos preview that they keep teasing, and they kind of push that off to the side. But if we just look at Opus 4.7 compared to the previous model, we can see they've got some selective improvements. So around agentic coding, they're using SW Bench Pro, SW Bench Verified, both reasonably good benchmarks to use. And so as you can see, there is a nice improvement here on both of those benchmarks. On the agentic terminal coding benchmark as well, a couple of other benchmarks that seem to be slightly improved. Some of them actually dropped a little bit, but overall, it seems like a very nice improvement. If you happen to be using Opus 4.6 for coding, now it's going to be very easy to just drop 4.7 in there, and you should be seeing more adherence to instructions and just the same kind of experience that we've been having so far with Claude Code. So next up on the same day, of course, OpenAI added computer use for macOS on their Codex application with the GPT 5.4 model. So what that means is that Codex now has background computer use on macOS. It can see your screen, it has its own cursor, it can click into any of the applications that you're using, and also basically just use your apps the way you would. But what makes it even more interesting is that it also has the ability to spawn multiple agents so they can work in parallel on a single machine while you're also working on your machine. So in some of these other applications, the way that they've kind of set it up is if the agent is using your computer, you can't also use your computer, or you can't use the same app. So that's a really nice addition. Also, we got a new in-app browser that lets us comment directly on the web pages we're building. The same thing we've kind of seen with other applications like Cursor, and I believe the anti-gravity one from Google also lets you do this. So now you can do it inside of Codex, just easier for you to point at something and tell the agent, hey, change the color of this, change the radius of that. In addition, Codex can now also generate images using the GPT Images 1.5 model directly in the app. So again, for front end, this is probably one of the easiest examples. If you're building a website and you need some placeholder images, you need a hero image, you can now ask the model to generate that for you and put it in the right place. So you don't have to jump into another app and come back to do that. What makes this release so interesting is that because Codex now has computer use, it can help you with other types of programming, not just web development, which is where these AI tools tend to really shine. And that's obviously because it's a lot easier to build the tools needed for these agents to pull in the information from the website or the web app and then analyze it, detect those issues, and then do that loop of finding the bug, fixing the bugs, running it again, and so on and so on. For developing, let's say, desktop applications or mobile applications, you tend to have a different setup. It's a lot harder for these agents to be able to see what you're doing or to see what the results of their code are. So now that the agent has the ability to see your screen and actually take over your computer, so let's say you're building a mobile application, or even in the video that they use themselves, they're using Xcode. So if you're building Mac applications and you're running it in the emulator, now the Codex agent can actually click in the app and test it out for you the way a real user would without you having to take a screenshot of every error or every visual issue and then put it back into the chat. It's just a lot easier if the agent itself can test the application after it makes the changes, detect the issues, and then try and fix them without you having to run through that loop over and over. And here's an example of the web browser that they've got. So here they are making some changes. And so we've got the web browser inside the Codex app, and they can just highlight things, click on them, and let the agent know what changes they want to make. So again, something we've kind of seen inside of Cursor and Anti-Gravity, but now it's inside of Codex as well. Next up, Google launches their native Gemini app for Mac. Again, what is it with all these Mac apps coming out first? It's just what developers are using. That's why we get them. Just a shame for Windows and Linux users, but it's great for us Mac OS users. And what that means is that on the Mac, with the option space command, you can bring up a tiny little prompt that connects you to Gemini. You can start chatting, and you can also share your screen. Currently only available on macOS 15 Plus. And again, hopefully we'll see that roll out sometime to Windows, but Google tends to be not so great about supporting all the different platforms early on. So another interesting thing about this is that Google says this is just the beginning of their desktop assistant. So it seems to be the first piece in a larger strategy, the same kind of thing we've been seeing with Anthropic's, Claude Desktop, and now Codex, where they're really trying to give the agents access to your computer, to your files, because that's where most of your important work happens. And so the deeper they can get those claws into your personal private context, the more likely you are to use the tools every single day and just make it a part of your life. So this seems to be the same thing that Google is now doing with their Gemini app. I tested it out earlier today and it works as advertised. If you used something like the ChatGPT desktop application or the Claude desktop application, very similar. The only real big changes are that you can share your window. So just makes it a little bit easier to provide that local context. And as far as I know, unlike Claude Desktop or Codex, doesn't actually have access to the files on your computer. So still a bit underpowered compared to some of the other options, but a good first step. And it seems like this is the way that Google's going to be moving forward, probably implementing their own version of what we saw with Codex earlier today. On the 15th, Google released their Gemini 3.1 Flash text-to-speech model. It supports over 200 different audio tags for steering vocal style, and it supports 70 plus languages. So this is really going to be an interesting model for anybody that has anything to do with text-to-speech. This model also supports native multi-speaker dialogue, which means with one single API call, you can send the entire dialogue, label your different speakers, and it's going to be able to spit out one single response with the entire dialogue. So if, let's say, you're making a podcast or something like that, you don't have to generate the different lines of dialogue individually and then stitch them together. You just send one call, it generates the entire audio file with the speakers that you've designated and all those audio tags. It's Google, so obviously these files are going to use their Synth ID watermark just to make it easy for people to detect if this is AI audio. And the pricing that they're mentioning is $1 per million text tokens in and $20 per million audio tokens out. And it's roughly 25 audio tokens per second of audio. And so very roughly about 5 minutes of audio are going to cost you 15 cents. So that's pretty good. And so here's their full press release. The links to this and all, as always, are going to be provided in the video description. I'm also going to include some examples that they've got here. They're pretty interesting, especially the tags that they mention. Like I said, over 200 different tags. They've got this entire speech studio thing that they've got set up to make it easier for either you to manually put the tags in yourself or get the AI to put them in there for you. In one of these videos, they show them doing that. So pretty expressive. According to their benchmarks, it's the second best model so far in terms of text-to-speech. So here's the graph I was mentioning on artificial analysis text-to-speech arena. They've got their own ELO ratings, and it seems like Gemini 3.1 Flash is actually doing pretty well. They're even outperforming 11 Labs by a little bit, which is supposed to be a really good model for text-to-speech. I've used it before in the past. It's been pretty good. So the fact that Google is now able to offer that with this new model is pretty exciting for anyone working in the text-to-speech space. And if we jump over for a moment to the artificial analysis website, they recently updated it. I think it looks pretty decent. I've just got it kind of bumped up in size, so it's kind of squished a little bit. This is a very interesting chart that they actually point to, which is the quality versus price. Again, this is the Arena ELO on the left-hand side and the price on the x-axis. So here's Gemini 3.1 Flash, and it's squarely within the top left-hand quadrant, which is where you'll find the models that have the highest ELO ratings and also the lowest costs. not the only one. There are definitely some other competitors. Not sure about this one here, or Fish.io. Honestly, some of these models I haven't really heard of. Foxtrol, I know that's from Minstrel. Kokoro, 82 million parameters. I've used that before. That's an open source model, I believe. And here on the very right, we have ElevenLabs V3. So these are very expensive and they're very comparable in terms of performance. So if you're looking for a cheap model, and especially with that multi-speaker support that they've got and just the tags to change the expressiveness, it just seems really easy to use, really cheap. This is going to be used, I think, very widely, especially because it supports so many languages. Yeah, definitely an interesting model to look at for text-to-speech. Notion released their 3.4 update, which is an update for their agent system. So according to them, agents are now more efficient to run. They estimate about 35 to 50% less expensive. You can now see how many credits each agent is using, some sort of a special dashboard. Agents can also now use the Slack integration. And if you are interested in that, unfortunately, they're only available at the $24 per month business plan. And they're currently running a free trial until May 3rd. And after that, you're going to have to pay $10 on top of your subscription per 1,000 credits. Depending on the complexity of the task that you give your agents is the number of credits that they're going to use. So some of these AI companies or companies that use AI are starting to use these credit systems to try and not spend more money than their agents are actually using so that they can continue to run their businesses. So it's an interesting update if you happen to use Notion. It's been a while since I've used Notion, and every now and then I jump in just to see what they are working on and what's changed. They've really doubled down on all the agentic and AI stuff. Agents is like their business or enterprise version of the AI agent that you get in just regular Notion. And so if you're not actually familiar with what these agents are, it's the same kind of thing we've seen for coding applications where you've got multiple instances of an AI entity and you give them different tasks and they go off and do their things. Same kind of idea, except inside of your notes. And so in Notion, what they want you to do is to give each one of these agents a particular task. Like you have an agent that updates your spreadsheets and another one that looks at your meeting notes and then maybe distributes tasks to different teams or reminds you to check in on someone, all kinds of different things. And because Notion has a bunch of different integrations, they kind of connect to all the different business logic and packages that you might use, like Salesforce or Google Drive, Gmail, your calendar. So it gives those agents all that context. You give them different jobs and they kind of run off and do their thing while you're not using Notion. Very interesting, but I feel like they've really strayed quite far from what their original intention was with Notion. But if you're interested in that and you happen to be in the enterprise space or you have a business, definitely worth checking out. Kind of interesting. On the 10th, Anthropic launched their Claude for Word beta, completing their trinity of Microsoft desktop applications. So this beta gives a native sidebar add-in for Microsoft Word on both Mac and Windows. Some of the things they describe that you can do with it are the things you kind of do with Claude anyway. They're talking about reading contracts, highlighting changes, and preserving the different formats. We have the actual listing for it on the Microsoft Marketplace. Not a great rating, but I don't know if that's had to do with Claude or more to do with Word. I'll leave you to figure that one out. And if we look at some of the screenshots they have in the Marketplace, we get a better idea of who they're really targeting. Not me or you, probably, because we, first of all, most likely do not use Word unless we have to use Word. But the people that do are people that write contracts, for example, lawyers, probably big organizations, enterprise level organizations, public organizations, they have to use Word. And so this is how they're able to bring in those AI tools into an environment where they're far more comfortable. Probably some of these folks are maybe not as tech savvy or not interested in AI as much as we are. So being able to present it as an add-on where it feels more like a Grammarly add-on, where it's just giving you suggestions, fixing some typos, maybe rewording things feels like a much nicer way to kind of ease some of these users into feeling comfortable with AI working in their documents. So I think this is where they're going with that strategy. This is, if you want to call it something, kind of like Claude for normies. On the 8th, Meta released their Muse Spark model. And this is a model release I actually missed last week when we were looking at their other open source models that they did release. This one's not an open source model. Muse was already on the benchmarks. And I just kind of slipped my mind because we have so many models coming out still. It's just a never-ending series of models and updates. But anyway, their Muse Spark model is the first model from their new AI lab. It is closed source, unlike the Llama series models that so many people have enjoyed and used. And so the idea is that it's a small but capable multimodal model, very heavy emphasis on it being multimodal. So it supports text, voice, image input, and they're putting it absolutely everywhere, powering their Meta AI app. I just looked at it earlier this morning. I have never seen that website. I didn't even know they had one, but it makes sense. It's also powering AI in WhatsApp, in Instagram, and the Ray-Ban glasses. So they're really just putting it absolutely everywhere they can. So if we take a look at the actual press release, here we've got some benchmarks, and what they put at the very top is obviously what they want us to focus on, which is really the core of this new model, is that it's multimodal. It's able to handle text and images and put those pieces together. And that makes a lot of sense that this is coming from Meta, because all the different applications that they have deal with a bunch of video and images and text and connecting them together, understanding the context, and then doing something with it. So they're not really focused on coding or agentic use or things like that. It's ingesting a bunch of information in different formats, connecting the dots, and then doing something useful with that. Some of these other ones are kind of interesting. We've got Humanities Last Exam, ArcAGI2, LiveCode Bench Pro. Again, very respectable results, nothing too exciting. These health benchmarks are kind of an interesting standout for me because in the release, they do mention they talked to something like 1,000 different health professionals to kind of improve their model. And it seems to be part of their strategy, at least for the Muse series of models. They're focusing on two things, multimodal and health. They want it to be able to understand anything you can kind of throw at it, text, audio, images, and also be really good at providing reasonably okay health information. So that's why they're really focused on this. And you can see it shows, because compared to some of these other models, they're performing pretty well. So an interesting angle that they've decided to take with the Muse Spark. Again, it doesn't seem quite so surprising when you consider the company that this is coming from. This is Meta. They are the company behind Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. They're interested in people, all the data that people produce. And so, of course, it makes sense that they wanted to be able to understand your photos and your texts and your posts, and then provide good information based on that. So makes sense where they're coming from. Be interesting to see what they do, what other versions of this model they produce, and if they make them widely available, or if they just kind of keep this as their in-house model for powering all their different products. So that remains to be seen. And on the 8th, Twitter added post auto translation and AI photo editing. I believe that was only on iOS. So Twitter now auto translates foreign language posts using Grok, and also added AI photo editing, which I'm sure is going to be great, and we're not going to have any more controversies around that. But essentially, this just came from the head of product at Twitter, Nikita Beer. We're rolling out auto translation worldwide to give posts in any language global reach on X. Translations are powered by Grok and have improved substantially over the last couple of months, but you can also just click on view the original and it'll show you the original language. Since they made this change, my personal feed has been very interesting on Twitter recently. I've been seeing post after post of really interesting and bizarre things from people all around the world, especially from Japan, as I think we all have if you happen to use Twitter. Probably one of the most entertaining additions that they've made to the platform since they decided to take it over. I'm kind of surprised they were the first ones to really do it, or do it this way where it auto translates. Previously, you could just click on a button and it would translate a post in a foreign language to English or whatever your native language is. But just having it auto translate and have your feed be all in your language, even though it's really content from all across the world, is really interesting. And so this is something I do hope we see more of in other social media platforms. Unlike the AI photo editing stuff. Less of that, more of this. So that was your tech and productivity update for week 16. The links to all the articles that I showed or mentioned are in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss next week's update. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.